want to start off by saying thank you to all of our new viewers. The last Undoing review is doing very well on the channel. I think the best we've ever had in recent memory. So if you've not yet hit the sub button, please do so. Hit that bell, hit the upvote. All that stuff helps the channel grow. You know, that's definitely a goal of ours, is to hit that 1,000 sub mark at some point in the future. There's a lot of other content on the channel. You know, we're doing Fargo, Mandalorian. There's back content. We got future content we're planning. So, definitely, take a look at the channel, see all the different content that's on there. So, like I said, we're going to be talking about The Undoing, episode 2, titled The Missing. And, it's interesting. We're only 2 episodes in, and they've basically, arguably, laid it all out for us, with the exception of the last 5 minutes, which I'll bring up. But basically, it all seems to be pointing towards Jonathan Fraser. We know that he was in a relationship with Elena. We know that he was paying for Miguel's school. We know that they're suspecting that he's the father of Elena's infant child. The night of her murder, he disappears. It all seems to be pointing right in his direction. Now he appears in the last 5 minutes, and he makes a counter-argument, but it's definitely intrigued me, and that counter-argument being basically, yes, those things are true, except I didn't kill her. And the night of the murder, I just so happened to be there. I left, came back, and she was dead. That's his argument. But like I said, we're 2 episodes in, and we're already, a lot of information has been dropped. I know we're jumping all the way to the end and, throughout the episode, but guys, what do you think? I know, Spencer, you were texting me some theories. Let's talk about it.
Well, the whole time I was thinking that she was trying to cover her own tracks. Like, I thought that Jonathan was dead. She already killed him, and she was trying to make it.
You talk about Grace, right?
Yeah. I was thinking that Grace was trying to cover her own tracks. I thought that maybe she killed Jonathan because she caught him and Elena, and that, she swiped his phone and, trying to make it look like he was never there, maybe turning off his location so that he was never linked to where she was at. And so I'm thinking she's just trying to cover her own tracks. And then fast forward to the end and he shows up, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's still a figment of her imagination. We saw her, envisioning, Elena's death, her on a billboard. So I'm like, well, bitch is just crazy. And then all of a sudden her son walks out the corner and is like, Dad. And I was like, damn it. So it just kept shooting my old theories in the foot, because I was thinking that Jonathan was dead. Now, I was thinking that, she still did it. She caught him. She followed maybe Jonathan to the studio or whatever. When Jonathan, stormed out after they had sex, maybe she killed her at that point. But I don't know. And then I started to get a feeling that maybe it was their kid that did it. Because, he kept arguing how good of a person his dad was. And
he seemed kind of weirdly cold in the first episode also.
Yeah, so that was off. So I'm not 100% sure who did it, but the fact that she didn't kill Jonathan kind of bummed me out a little bit, because I was on that bandwagon the whole time.
I think I had literally every theory that you just came up with. I was also thinking during this episode, and we didn't talk beforehand at all, but those were all my thoughts. Originally, I thought, oh, she killed them both, and she'll find that out, and she'll be trying to cover that up as well, and and she's already covered it up. But my thought was that maybe it was traumatic enough and odd enough that it's the sort of thing that she was in denial about what she did. And we were just seeing glimpses of what actually happened, like you mentioned last episode, Brian, that we got the locker room scene with her and Elena. Elena's the other woman's name, correct?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, we get that scene early on, and we see it play out in real time, and then later on we get a memory that seems a bit different. So I thought maybe she was in denial about things, perhaps trying to build up and believe her own narrative about how things have gone down. And that still does seem to be the case, with the exception that well, we know for sure now she definitely didn't kill her husband. And other than that, I think a lot of those theories are still potentially possible.
Continuing the focusing on Grace, and obviously she's sort of our POV character. She's the main sort of protagonist in this story, but there's a lot of oddities about her, and which is what I understand both of you are leaning towards her being involved. I am in the same camp. I agree that there's something off, and I want to focus on a specific scene where she's walking outside and she starts looking at these like billboards or these signs, and she starts having these visions, and it isn't so much that she's thinking these things or having these visions. It's that she physically reacts to it, within the scene. So you could argue that, she's in the middle of a breakdown. There's a lot of stuff happening, and that's a fair argument. I do think that is a fair argument. But you compound that with all the other strange things, like you brought up the first episode, us getting different memories that we weren't getting originally. It does seem like there's something off with Grace.
Yeah, and until I saw the trailer for this coming episode where, the helicopter lands and it basically hauls Jonathan off, I was still thinking that maybe
well, you were you were still on that.
I was still like, maybe she's having a memory of one time, Jonathan comes back and, she, the kid comes out and hugs him, like, "Oh, Dad, you're here." So I'm like, all right, well, maybe she's still imagining shit. And then all of a sudden he's, in jail. And I'm like, damn it. I was still hoping, but I mean, that's still at this point knowing what we know, but I don't think that this is the first time this has happened. So the whole time, like when they're investigating and
What do you mean?
That he's been romantically involved with somebody, I'm sure.
Oh, okay.
Because they said 3 separate occasions.
I was was very curious about that also. Yeah.
So my is that I still think that Elena's a bit bonkers. I think that she was, single white femaling Nicole Kidman. She was, stalking Grace, wanting to be Grace. That was still super weird.
Have either of you seen that movie? I'm just curious.
Single white female?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
I like that movie.
That's the vibe I was getting. Like once from Grace, at first I thought that
the
Elena
obsession.
Yes. I thought that she was interested in Grace, like, sexually. Like she was like, "Hey, what's up, girl?" But that's not the vibe I was getting as the first episode progressed. And throughout this second episode, the stuff that they kept alluding to made me believe that she was obsessed with wanting to be Grace, not necessarily be with her, but be her. Like,
yeah, and that proves a lot of things that I think in large part you were saying, Spencer, about the last episode, where it seems like she was doing a lot of things just like potentially a power move. Also, like she was sort of it was unclear whether she wanted to be with her or whether she was checking her in some way. Some of the things she's doing.
Kind of like she was,
like even the scene with the baby, that sort of thing was, just sort of, I have this thing of his that you don't. I have this child with him. Sort of saying, she's sort of flexing in a way, like, and maybe trying to feel out whether Grace actually knows about their relationship and knows about this baby. Just trying to get information. Like,
yeah,
it puts things in a completely different context now that we know the things we do.
I want to give kudos to the show for the way they shot Grace through, specifically the first half of the episode. If anybody has ever had any form of anxiety in their life, they do a good job of capturing that. I don't know if you guys were feeling that, but the way the camera was positioned, just the way it was shot, her performance, the close-ups, that sense of where's Jonathan? I can't, what's going on. The show itself, just the way it was done, gave, for me personally, the audience a sense of anxiety and dread. And
Well, yeah, and I agree with you because during this episode, I was kind of wondering, it's like, okay, yeah, things do feel tense and do kind of and it does kind of build an anxiety or does a good job of expressing anxiety. And I mean, you really do have to credit, I guess, the cinematography because you're getting a lot of things that, often would happen in a drama of this kind, and would scenes that normally wouldn't feel that tense, where she's being interrogated and everything, and when she gets home and she's just kind of thinking through things, and when she gets home again, and they're like in there collecting evidence and stuff. You like said, you can feel the tension and the anxiety in those scenes.
To me, it felt almost less suspense movie and almost like horror ish.
Right.
Like Get Out or Us, like those kind of movies where it was
That's a
very
great good example. Yeah.
yeah, because it feels like tense. It's not you get an uneasy, tense feeling from it, and they did a great job with that. And for this being a non-horror categorized movie, it did a great job making me feel that way. And I, like you said, it's the director, the cinematography, the actors doing a great job. It bouncing back and forth. It was focusing on her mouth, and then you could hear the whispering in the background, and then she would mouth what the whispers were saying, but she wasn't saying it out loud, and kind of giving you that internal dialogue that people have with themselves, but it was kind of doing it out loud, and it was really it it made me feel that maybe this show is giving us some foreshadowing, that maybe Grace, her being I don't know if she's a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I'm not sure what her medical expertise is, but I think that it's given us some insight to maybe some mental illness that she has.
Could be.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Like I said, we focus on her so much, and the show itself has sort of had us question what she's seeing, and you know what I mean. So yeah, I think the show does feel like it's going in that direction. I want to go into all the different little social circles and the different little characters that pop up throughout the episode that are part of her life. But damn, like she can't trust anyone she knows. From I'll just start with the doctor. She sees this doctor that she seems to very know well. Stewart, I believe, is his name, and he completely freaks out around her, and is basically saying, "I can't talk to you. I'm not allowed." Blah blah blah. Which is crazy to me to think that. I mean, it's not crazy that happens so much because she was lied to and she's not aware of what happened with Jonathan. But it's crazy to me that he didn't pull her to the side. Just say something like, "Look, you can't come here because Jonathan was let go." Blah blah blah. But no, he was just like freaked out.
Yeah, it was weird. Like, is that the kind of information that he wouldn't be able to give her, or
Maybe, yeah. That's an important scene. You brought up one. You brought up that there were 3 allegations before the firing. So
Well,
maybe there's more shit with the hospital that we don't know.
and
yeah,
I
yeah,
think super important because for it to be multiple allegations, for him to have hired a lawyer to basically countersue them, I think that she probably did know Stuart. She knows him by first name. And for them to be on a first name basis, because she kind of stumbled on his even last name. So they're on a first name speaking basis. But I think that him, after, the countersuit or whatever, probably is legally bound to not say a damn thing. And maybe he felt like she was trying to pump him for information or try to get him to, go back on something that he said. And, I think he freaked out because legally he felt maybe that she was trying to get something out of him to either give Jonathan an alibi or something else, because the cops already knew everything. They already spoke with those people from the hospital. So Stewart had probably just finished talking to the cops a couple hours prior to that, and then to see her probably freaked him out.
well, yeah, and also it seems like this is, well, like you mentioned before, Spencer, the fact that there have been 3 of those allegations. That means this has been going on for a while. So this is a thing that, potentially Jonathan has done on multiple occasions with multiple women. And it's probably to the point where, and we're seeing mental issues with her, and perhaps she's in denial about a lot more than it seems, and it's the sort of thing where he just really didn't want to get involved because because there is enough drama between those two that she's been actively ignoring. Because I mean, the thing is, when we finally see the husband again, he just, I mean, it's too clean the way he lays out all the things he lied about. There's not a bit of hesitation whatsoever. Like, he even admits that night that they were at that party, that she comforted him and that he slept with his wife. Or like right before that, he went and he slept with with the woman they're accusing him of murdering. So it's like even like, so he was lying to her up until the last moment that they were in contact with each other.
Well, I think it's important too. When you listen to Grace, she immediately defends his character, saying that yeah, he probably has hugged, or he has embraced these women. So I think that she probably is aware of the first 2 allegations, and his way out of it was saying that they were misconstrued advances, that he was never trying to do anything. So I think that when they say 3 allegations, she probably knew about the first 2. I don't think she felt that maybe they went as far as they did, knowing what Stewart said and what the police said. I think that the other 2 allegations she probably at least was remotely aware of, but he talked her way out of it. He talked his own way out of it, rather, and explaining it as, no, these women are misconstruing this in their time of need and stuff. I was just trying to comfort them, and they took it as me trying to have a sexual advance on them, which clearly he does. He preys on women's moment of weakness, when they're grieving their child, and it's kind of fucked up. To me, it revealed Jonathan's character more so than anybody else's.
What about her friend, the lawyer?
Sylvia.
That was fucked up.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, yeah, we're best friends and all, but I kept a secret from you about your husband getting, in trouble at work. And I mean, she laid it out that she wasn't aware that he got fired, but she knew that there were allegations. And she said they were, she didn't go in the details, but she said they were fireable. So she does know what the allegations were, and even her conclusion was you could be fired for them.
But yeah, it's a super messed up scenario, but it's again another issue with the friend who, for professional reasons, couldn't say anything. Like, because I mean, at that, given that she was his lawyer in that moment, and we see how messed up Jonathan is, I mean, like, he probably would, if he could, legally retaliate if she's like, well, I'm going to tell my best friend that you did this. Like, I wouldn't put it past him, because like Spencer said, I mean, what we've seen in this episode has shown more about his character than anybody else's.
Well, and I also question, just based on a couple of things that they've shown so far, and that the dad, Donald Sutherland, I don't know how much he knows, because with as much as he's connected, clearly, just by how much money he has, holy shit, that apartment or condo or whatever the hell it was, good lord, like the height of those ceilings in New York City, good. I mean, I can't imagine how many millions of dollars that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But how much does he know about Jonathan? How many times has Jonathan come to him, with the problems he's having? Because I think with, they've said that he's basically supplementing their income. He's, helped pay for other things. He's also, a big charitable person when they did the auction. So for him to have the amount of money he has, is he also covering shit up? Maybe Donald Sutherland's character, and I don't remember the dad's name, but maybe he is covering shit up because he doesn't want his daughter to be involved. He didn't want Jonathan's bad name to be, dragged through the mud, because then that also is a reflection upon him. So I don't know that he's not somewhat involved in some of this as well.
Yeah, because it seems like he's going to be a character that's also kind of heavily focused on in this. So it's hard to say. And like you said, given that he's supplementing their income and that he did get very direct with her right away. It's like, how's your relationship doing and everything, and suggested that they leave town for a while. His suggestion of that may have been a hint that he come to think of it, he may have told them to go to the beach house for a while because he knew Jonathan was hiding out there.
Well, why the hell didn't I was thinking, why did the
Why
cops
wouldn't the cops
search
go
the
there?
beach house? Yeah.
I don't know. The cops investigating this, I don't know if it's just because they're showing us from the perspective of Grace, but it feels like they're always 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of Grace. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not sure what all they have or haven't done yet, what information they did have. Uh, Clearly, when they went to talk to her the first time in the first episode, they already knew some of the information about Jonathan, because there'd be no other reason for them to be implicating her as badly as they were. And I mean implicating her as in, alluding that maybe she knew more than she did.
Right.
Yeah.
And they probably learned a lot of what they learned from talking to her friend in the first place. Her friend who is a lawyer. That's probably how they connected the dots, because they interviewed all these moms.
I have another thought about Grace, just thinking about it as in the middle of this conversation. She's in the first episode, they show her and they hint that she's really good at reading people and like that's her thing. But now we're realizing that she surrounded herself with people that will, even if they have justified reasons to lie, will build a wall around themselves to not let her in on the reality of her situation, her world. And she doesn't seem to be able to see past that, or maybe she is, and like you said, maybe she's repressing some memories or something.
I think so. Only because when you look at the gentlemen that are in there receiving counseling or treatment or couples therapy or whatever it is that they're doing, they focused a very long time
Them
on
holding hands.
no. If you look at it, the one guy's got like a hold of his arm,
Yeah.
almost like a controlling type thing, and she kept focusing her.
Okay, it says that. Yeah, Larry, what do you? Because I kept trying to figure out why. Why were they focusing on that? What was going on in her mind in that moment?
Well, yeah, I think that was a bit of self-reflection. I'm trying to remember the dialogue from that scene because because they were talking about how he craved danger because he's such a safe person.
Yes.
And I feel like she was self-reflecting on that as well, or that we as the audience were meant to sort of potentially see Grace in that way, and that scene was potentially foreshadowing or alluding to her potential guilt.
But I think that to me, just like looking at it and then trying to piece together why they're focusing on it, and what the gentleman was saying, he was like you said, Larry, he's such a safe person, but he wanted to, experience that danger because he was always looked at as, this good person. And they've mentioned Grace being this good person over and over and over, but for them to focus on the arm like that, it almost to me looked like when they talk about, men who are controlling,
Right.
it looked like he was, and not in their situation, but when they focus on the arms like that, you know behave yourself, kind of, grabbing the back of the arm. It's, when you were a kid and your mom pinched the inside of your arm and be like, you better fucking behave or I'm gonna whoop your ass. Kind of,
Exactly. It was a way to keep you in line. Yeah.
yeah. And that's what it felt like for them to focus on that. That's what I think Grace was thinking. I don't think that the two gentlemen were in that situation, but I think that that's what she was flashing back to, is that kind of stuff. So I don't know if that's, once again, I think it's Jonathan. And I'm thinking more and more. I mean, I still think that Grace probably killed Elena, but I think that it may have been on Jonathan's doing, as much as I think that we're going to find out more and more that he's not just a cheating person. I think that he's a giant piece of shit.
Well, yeah, and that's a good point because and that was one thought I was having during this episode too, is if there's anybody else, like if we are seeing Elena's murder in Grace's flashbacks or visions or whatever you want to call them, then those are very tight shots that we're seeing. We're seeing hands, a hammer. We're seeing Elena's face. What we're not seeing is enough of the room to tell if there was anybody else in the room. We're not seeing a full shot of Elena in that room, so we can't tell whether there was someone else there, whether it was Grace and the husband, or Grace's son, and maybe Grace walked in as it happened. Because maybe her son caught them. He was potentially, you know, saw his dad veer a different way than what he usually does when he takes his route home, and maybe followed them and caught them, and just in the heat of the moment did that. It's hard to say from the way it's framed.
We've talked about this when we've done other shows too, about, maybe the son himself sees his dad be shitty to his mom, sees his dad control his mom. So now when he sees, Elena, he sees this woman who's trying to ruin them. So, he's trying to control that situation as well. I mean, it's a kid, so I try not to go too dark on that route, but I think that it's still an option. There's a lot of loosely based breadcrumbs sprinkled throughout all the episodes that could implicate a lot of people, but I'm thinking that this is all revolving around Jonathan manipulating somebody to kill Elena. I'm not sure who he manipulated to do it just yet, though.
Henry does act odd. There's certain things he's said and done. Now I was like, well, maybe I could argue both sides of it. Even in the beginning, he's trying to rationalize why his dad would leave his phone and why you couldn't get a hold of him. I think a kid in that scenario could be anxious, but then he's not too. He doesn't ever seem afraid of anything.
Right.
Just irritated. So I don't know that I don't really know if that's just the performance or if there's something more to Henry. There definitely could be.
Well, because at first I thought he was just trying to comfort his mom. Basically make her. Yeah. He sees her kind of freaking out, so he's just trying to rationalize things to help her. Kind of get her back to a spot where she can rationalize what's going on. But then it's almost like for his age, he's too calm and collected, and it felt kind of almost like he was trying to rationalize things himself, which is also, to me, a red flag, and kind of showing whether he's seeing his dad manipulate other people or if he is just, got a little bit of his mom's crazy in him, and he's perhaps just as crazy as she is. I don't know.
Any more thoughts, Larry or Spencer, on the dog stories now? They didn't bring it up again, but after all that we've learned in episode 2, I still think there's some importance to that story because it's brought up a lot in episode 1, the fact that Jonathan doesn't want a dog. He says he's allergic. And then at the end, Grace says, no, it's not that he's allergic, just that he had a dog when he was a kid. It got loose. It got killed, and it upsets him. He doesn't want dogs. I think there's something to that story.
I
Uh,
think, I think Elena or maybe one of her kids are allergic to dogs. I don't think that has anything to do with Jonathan. I think
That's a
that's a
good.
story he made up.
That's a good point. Yeah, because if he comes like if anyone in that house has a dog allergy of some kind, and yeah, if they get a dog, then that's a good point. So that
Because if he met her because Miguel had cancer, then his immune system's dog shit. So, like, if he has any kind of allergy to pet dander or hair, he could really be putting Miguel in danger. Well, I think that it was to protect one of the Alvarezes. I don't think it had anything to do with Jonathan himself.
yeah, and that's potentially and that digs the hole even deeper because that's potentially a lie, another lie that he's told his wife that she repeated to their son, thinking it was a true story. Which is to say, like, how long has this been going on? With this particular woman. Yeah, like you said, it may be the Alvarez's. It may be one of the other two cases because maybe he still has relationships
Yeah,
with other women as well.
it could be somebody who we're not privy to just yet.
Right?
the end of the episode is she calls the cops. She's crying. He's embracing his son, and they arrive. Or well, we see in the previews that they're going to get him. Did you see the previews, Larry?
I did.
Okay, cool. So yeah, we get that whole dramatic scene of them picking him up, and then her being questioned about were you afraid for your life, and her getting frustrated with that line of questioning. Where is she going to fall on this whole situation? He's the lead suspect. How much evidence do they legitimately have? I'm sure we'll start getting that next week. And this thing is, if there's enough, obviously it's going to go to trial, and that'll be a part of the show. So I'm assuming next week we should have some pretty big revelations as far as what is accurate. Maybe whether confirmation that the baby is his. Now he went ahead and straight up said he was at the murder scene, so that's part of his story. But it should be an interesting episode. Any thoughts on the ending of this episode?
Well, I think how, regardless of whether he did it or not, how could you, put yourself in the situation and then make yourself look more and more guilty? Like, I'm really curious as to what his game plan was because, yes, he saw her, argued with her, and then like tried to leave, and then had sex with her, and then she died, and he came back and was like, "Oh shit." So he ran, knowing that they had sex, knowing that there's going to be DNA, knowing that if they find any of this shit out, he's going to be the number one suspect, and then he ran. Like it, and but he didn't do it. It seems really weird.
Yeah, what was his running plan?
That's what,
he
what was,
probably could have got money and left the country or something potentially, but he didn't.
and that's what makes it me question what's going on. The fact that he is still around, the fact that he didn't run, like you just said, Brian, they have access to this vast amount of money. He could, and he didn't have his phone with him. He didn't have anything with him. He literally could have just grabbed a, passport and just fucking bounced. They got enough money to go wherever he wanted.
Yeah, which is why I think he's absolutely a shitty person and he's told all these lies, but to me that doesn't spell out guilty. I think he feels that he's innocent of this one thing, and maybe even no. Well, he of course seems to know that he's going to have to take this to court because he stuck around while his wife was calling the cops.
Oh yeah, I think he's guilty, but I don't think he's guilty of the murder. I think that he's guilty of a lot of other stuff, but I don't know necessarily that. Well, I don't think that he's the one that smashed her head in. I think
Right.
that he had a hand in her head being smashed in, but I don't think that he was the one with the hammer per se. Kind of
Yeah.
like Charles Manson didn't necessarily kill any of those people, but he definitely was the reason that they died.
I've gone through all my notes. I don't really have anything else. Is there anything else y'all want to discuss regarding The Undoing, Episode 2, The Missing?
There was a couple scenes that also led me to believe I don't know if it was a history of, I really want to know more about Grace. Not just because she seems to be one of the main characters. The like we talked about, the controlling stuff, the focusing on the hand behind the arm, her not necessarily just hearing voices, but her like muttering to herself, her inner dialogue kind of coming out. I want to know what it is that, if anything, if she has something, or what her past is, whether it's she had a shitty relationship before Jonathan, or if her shitty relationship is with Jonathan. I really want to know what that backstory is, because just like this episode, she's walking down the street, basically having a nervous breakdown, seeing things. Uh, you know, I I'm not. I don't outwardly see things. I'm not hallucinating, but I play scenarios in my mind sometimes. I'm like, oh shit, well maybe this is, you know, this job interview, and then after the job interview, I'm sitting there playing it in my head. Oh, this could have went differently, or this could have done this, but I'm not, envisioning it and talking to myself out loud, and she is. So I'm really curious as to what her trauma is, and I hope that we find out, because I really want to know more about her character overall.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because it definitely seems like trauma. Because you get, at least I get the feeling at this point that she's not Sherlock's Holmesing these things together. That these are events that she's seen, and maybe having seen the murder, is what's causing some of that trauma. And but clearly there's some other past issues in there as well, because there's clearly, as you mentioned, a lot going on with her mental state. And as you mentioned before, she surrounds herself with these sort of callous people. This insular group who seems to be very protective of their status and everything. And we saw in the first episode that she was telling a lot of kind of sloppy, obvious lies when she was talking to the detectives early on. And unless there's something that deep down she knew, there seemed to have been no reason for that. So I'm looking forward to figuring out what's going on there, and potentially, as you said, Brian, with the dog story, which Spencer, your theory makes a lot of sense. That would be his reasoning for not wanting a dog.
Yeah, 2 episodes in, I'm intrigued. I think the positioning of having Jonathan appear at the end and rattle off his his case to why he wasn't the murderer definitely makes it where you absolutely want to tune in next week to see the third episode. Very, very clever in terms of capping off the episode that way to the writers. So I'm excited. 4 left. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this all plays out. Anything else?
No,
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it all.
Oh, a cinematography thing. I really like the water going over the rocks. I don't know. It just looked really cool. But I don't know why I focused on that part. Oh, that looks cool. But that's it.
Appreciate everyone listening. As I said up front, thanks. The last video did so well, so hopefully this one does as well or better. Fargo goes up tomorrow. We have The Mandalorian. Definitely check out our Mandalorian review. The first one's already up. The next one will be up on Friday Friday evening. So appreciate everybody, and we'll see you.
Bye.
Bye.